I'm Lucy from Bristol Hypopressives, and in this video we are going to take a look at posture in lying. So come down onto your mat, and lying on your back you want to have your feet hip distance apart and parallel. And first of all, we're just going to check in with how our body has landed. So I want you to take your hands, and without moving at all, I want you to see if you can get them underneath your lower back at all. So notice if your back is flat on the floor, notice if your back is arched off the floor and you have a big arch, or notice if you can almost get your hands to meet underneath, you've got a small arch. So just observing how the body has settled on the mat. And now we are going to work through an exercise that will bring our pelvis more into its centre. So maybe you found that you've got a flat back and your pelvis is tilted, tucked under, so in a posterior tilt. Maybe you've noticed that you've got a big gap and you've got an anterior tilt of the pelvis. So we're just going to work through an exercise which is going to give the pelvis some more range of movement so that it can come into its centre a little bit more effectively. So you're going to imagine you've got a clock face on the top of your pelvis, and you've got 12 o'clock up towards your head and 6 o'clock down towards your feet. And we're just going to bring the hands to the ASIS bone, so your top of your pelvis, your hip bones, and we're going to start rocking the pelvis between those two numbers. So as you come down towards your feet, down towards 6 o'clock, you'll find that the back arches off the floor, and then as you come up towards your head, you'll find that the back flattens on the floor. So we're finding length in the pelvic floor muscles as we come down towards the feet, and then the pelvic floor muscles shorten as we draw the pelvis up towards the head. So just keep going with that movement. So we're working the pelvic floor muscles through their full range, or more of their full range, than just staying static in one position. So just keep going and just noticing if either position feels more easeful or more natural for you to come into. So we're rocking forwards and backwards. And then let's just start marrying this movement with the breath. So we're going to inhale as we come down towards the feet. Exhale as you come up towards the head. We're inhaling, so we're finding length with the pelvic floor with the breath on the inhale. And as you exhale and tilt the pelvis under, we're getting that shortening of the pelvic floor muscles. So lovely. Keep inhaling as you come down towards the feet and exhaling up towards the head. Nice. So we're just mobilizing the pelvis. We're working the pelvic floor muscles through a range of movement or a range of tone. Lovely. And then you're going to find the centre point on that clock. So coming into where you feel most centred on your clock. So in the middle of those two numbers. Lovely. And then we're just going to tilt the pelvis from 9 to 3. So we're going to tilt down to 9 and then tilt over to 3. Keeping your knees as still as possible. So we just don't want the knees to be rocking side to side. We want this to be a movement of the pelvis. Lovely. So you can imagine that you're like, it's a seesaw. That's a good visualization. Or that you're rolling a marble from each ASIS bone. Lovely. Okay, great. And then coming into the center again, so in between those two numbers. And then we're just going to take some circles with the pelvis. So you're going to hit all of those numbers around your clock. So imagine you're rolling a pea or a marble around the clock face, around the outer edge of the clock face, and you're hitting all the numbers on that clock. Or you can imagine that you're squishing a pea as you're rolling around on the floor. Lovely. So just moving the pelvis in this way, mobilizing the pelvis. Nice. And then we'll come back the other way. Lovely. And then come into center. And then just notice what position you've come into. So again, use the hands underneath the lumbar spine, so underneath the lower back. and see if your hands can just about meet underneath. That's a good indicator that your pelvis is in a central position, rather than having pelvis tucked under, back flat on the floor, or pelvis too anteriorly tilted and this big kind of gap underneath the lower back. And then once you've found your neutral pelvis, you want to come up and make sure that the ribs are on the floor and that you haven't flared the ribs off to compensate for the pelvis being in neutral. So just checking in, are my ribs on the floor or are they flaring off a bit? So trying to work that rib cage, back of the ribs, down onto the earth. And then working up to the shoulders, keeping the shoulders nice and relaxed. And then you want your head, that occipital bone in the back of your head, to be on the floor as well. If you find that your head is lower, you might need to put a cushion underneath, or a blanket or a towel underneath your head. What we want these diaphragms, so throat diaphragm, breathing diaphragm, pelvic diaphragm, to be aligned on top of each other, so that when we do our breathing, we get this nice synergistic movement and we are spreading the pressure more effectively around the whole system. Really nice. Lovely. So this sets you up in a really good position to continue with your lateral breathing, your apnea, and then going into your first posture, which is Demeter. I hope you found this video useful. Do read the description for more details on how to work with me, and drop in the comments and let me know how you get on. Thanks so much.